Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Public Safety Committee work session of Monday, December 1st. It's hard to believe it's December 1st, 2025. Today we have one topic on the agenda. It's an update on the Advisory Commission on Policing. As we begin, I'd like to thank Ms. Farag and Mr. Anbinder for preparing the staff, Mr. Anbinder's in the audience, preparing the staff report for the topic today, and for once again and always assembling most informative packet for us. And when Councilmember Mink is running late, she will be here hopefully fairly soon. And unless Councilmember Lukey has any opening comments, I'm going to ask the panel to please introduce themselves and ask if they have any opening comments, and then ask Ms. Farag to please walk us through the discussions. So would you please?
Francisco Gonzalez.
If you'll cut on the, yeah, there you go.
Hello, I'm Francisco Javier Gonzalez, and I am the co-vice chair of the Advisory Commission on Policing.
Hi, my name is Brian Bellamy. I'm the chair.
Eva Quitman, co-vice chair, youth member.
And I do see John Stevenson in the audience. He's helping Mr. Anbinder in the audience right now. So, and with that, Ms. Farag, could you please lead us through this packet?
Sure. I'm going to actually turn it back over to the ACP members. They have a brief PowerPoint presentation for you, but just as a brief background, the original commission, the Policing Advisory Commission, was established in December 2019 and first impaneled in 2020. That ran its 4 years. In 2023, the council passed legislation that briefly changed some of the aspects of the committee, including its name to Advisory Commission on Policing, also the training requirements, now that's determined by the chair, and also explicitly stated it is an advisory commission that gives information to the council. They have, since their inception in 2024, this current commission has produced a work plan that has guided its work. It has determined that it was much more efficient if it used subcommittees, and it is divided down into 3 subcommittees that are doing a lot of substantive work, and they have issued several letters to council with certain recommendations. One was just taken by the council briefly or explored briefly by the council to change the reporting date for the police statistical data report required under Bill 4520 from a February 1st date into April. So I'm just going to turn it over to the commission. They've got a PowerPoint to walk you through, and it gives a much better, more detailed overview of what they've been doing over the past year and a half.
Thank you. And as we begin, and please, if you can cut off your mics if you're not speaking, and I'm going to try to do the same. But if you are speaking, please cut on your mic. Before we begin, I just want to thank everyone for everything you're doing. We sincerely appreciate it. That doesn't mean that we're going to follow every suggestion you ever make, but we need to know your suggestions. Mm-hmm. And over time, sometimes things become clearer from both sides, how things have taken place. So with that, again, thank you.
Very good. Good morning. Thank you, Chairman Katz, Council Member Lukey, and we are hoping for Council Member Mink's safe arrival. But thank you for this opportunity to talk with you about the work and the plans of the Montgomery County's Advisory Commission on Policing. My name is Brian Bellamy, and in June I was asked by my colleagues in the commission to serve a second year as chair, and I was honored by the ask. I'm accompanied by our 2 co-vice chairs, Francisco Gonzalez and Eva Quitman. And before I talk about our work, I would like to start with a few words of background for the benefit of those who may not be familiar with our commission. The ACP was created in 2019 by the Montgomery County Council in response to the public conversation at the time on police practices and as an effort to increase community involvement in matters of public safety. By statute, the purpose of the ACP is to advise the County Council on policing matters. The Commission is not a regulatory or disciplinary body and has no authority over any law enforcement agency. we are required to forward to the Police Accountability Board complaints we receive involving police misconduct and discipline. The commission is composed of 15 members, 2 of whom are ex officio members representing the Chief of Police and the Fraternal Order of Police. The other 13 commissioners are public members like me. We are unpaid volunteers. 11 of the public commissioners were selected by the council on February 2024. 3 had been serving since 2020, and 2 others joined us in October and December of 2024. To our work, each of the public members contributes different perspectives, expertise, and skills. Collectively, we reflect a broad representation of the county's diverse population and commitment to community service. 2 of us are ministers. The 2 ministers are here today. 1 is a veteran, 1 is a nurse, and most of us have served in volunteer organizations prior to joining the commission. 2 of us are immigrants. Some of us are longtime residents, while others moved here in the last decade. Geographically, the commissioners reside in all 4 quadrants of the county. The ages of the commissioners range from the mid-20s to 80 years old, so that's 2 to 3 generations, depending on how you count a generation. Some of the commissioners are retired, while 2 were specifically appointed by the executive council, to represent the perspectives of younger members of our community, which is so important. Our commissioners share an interest or expertise in policing matters. 2 of us have served in law enforcement. 2 have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. 2 are lawyers. One of the commissioners is a vice president of the NAACP Montgomery County chapter, and yet another founded securepotomac.org to foster community engagement in crime prevention and public safety. Upon taking office last year, we asked the council for its priorities, and in its letter, May 9th, 2024, the council outlined for us 4 priorities, which include to look into how MCPD collects, analyzes, and uses data, proactively elicit community input, provide analysis and recommendation on pending legislation, and look into implementation and recommendations and requirements of police reform efforts. I will now speak to the work of the commission, focusing on our efforts since our annual report to the council in July of this year. The ACP is required to meet a minimum of 6 times per year, but we decided from the start to hold monthly meetings, monthly plenary meetings, and we also have subcommittees which meet separately as needed. All ACP plenary meetings are held in accordance with the state's Open Meetings Act and are open to the public, normally at 6:30 p.m. on the 2nd Monday of the month. Plenary meetings are generally held virtually and can be accessed by members of the public through the ACP website, along with agendas, minutes, correspondence, reports, and video recordings. As noted in our annual report, since July, we are making greater use of our committees to work more efficiently and dive deeper on issues between plenary sessions. Currently, we have 3 committees. The implementation committee, first of all, a committee, the implementation of committees. A committee is a following up of one of the priorities that you have given us. So looking at implementation of the 3 police reform efforts I mentioned earlier, over a dozen virtual and in-person meetings. This committee has reviewed 300 entries in the dashboard of the county's Government Reimagining Public Safety Act. The dashboard was created to advance transparency and accountability by enabling residents of the county to track progress on the implementation of police reforms. This committee is currently refining their initial findings on the Maryland Police Accountability Act in preparation for consultations with MCPD before formally forwarding them to the council. Over the next few months, the committee will complete similar processes for the other two reform efforts. Then there's Safety and Public Schools Committee. The members of the Safety and Public Schools Committee seeks to enhance the public conversation on this issue, and are looking into how police officers can contribute to safety in schools without contributing to the school to jail pipeline. The members of this committee have met with police officials and are reviewing the memorandum of understanding governing police officers in public schools. Then there's the Data Committee, which is looking at how MCPD collects, uses, and reports data. The goal is to help the police department to be more effective and transparent, to identify potential bias in police practices, and address concerns that police data is overly focused on police outputs and insufficiently focused on outcomes. The Data Committee developed the recommendations we sent to the council in our October 13th letter regarding the mandatory police reporting requirements, as well as the testimony we submitted for the November 18th public hearing on Bill 3325, Community Policing, and your report deadline. Currently, they are also reviewing a compendium of MCPD databases provided by the department. With regards to our public outreach, one of the most important tasks of the council has given the commission is to elicit direct input from those sectors of our community most impacted by crime and police actions. And we are doing this through our website and by organizing public forums. We've had 2 in 2025. These forums also help inform the public conversation in Montgomery County about public safety matters. For example, our first public forum was held virtually in March, and it focused on MCPD's new policy for consent searches at traffic stops. The lively and constructive exchange of perspectives between Chief Yamada and Councilmember Jawando at this forum was particularly useful in informing the public on the new consent policy and other public safety issues. On September 8th, we held in this room an in-person forum to elicit views from the community on their major concerns regarding policing. Given the diversity of our community, it is not surprising that at this forum we heard varying priorities and concerns on a number of issues. Some members of the public worried about police staffing gaps or believe that police officers work under excessive constraints, while others were concerned that some policing practices may be unhelpful or biased. Some parents spoke passionately about potential threats to their children in schools, while others spoke with equal passion about their worries that their children might be adversely affected by an over-reliance of school administrators on police. The commissioners listened closely, and we appreciated the comments of all participants. I can assure you that the input we received at the public forum, as well as the comments we received through our website, informed the work of the commissioners and the advice we provide to you. Also related to these public forums is a letter we sent to the state's attorney in October asking him to clarify comments he made regarding the proportion of guns recovered in the county as a result of vehicular consent searches. The comments were made at the virtual public forum in March, and some of the commissioners thought that the proportion he mentioned did not track with the MCPD data we have seen. After the state's attorney's remarks came up at the public forum in September, we thought the clarification was needed to ensure that the public conversation on the issue is founded on accurate data. We plan to hold another 2 public forums in 2026, ideally in venues that are closer to and more convenient for those disproportionately affected by crime, and those who are less able to have their voices heard. Also, in terms of outreach, 4 commissioners participated in the inaugural session of the Police Academy's Informed Police Training module on April 15th. The meeting was meant as an opportunity for new police recruits to learn about the ACP and the community perspective we provide to the County Council. It was also an opportunity for the ACP to learn about the perspectives of our newly minted police officers on their training and expectations as they commence their new careers. The Commission agreed to participate regularly in these innovative training seminars, including the next one to be held on January the 7th, 2026. In August, we sent you copies of 3 letters to Police Chief Yamada regarding departmental policies. We welcome his decision to conduct a comprehensive review of written policies, as well as his invitation for the public to comment on those policies. Clear written policies are fundamental to any organization and should be more than guides for day-to-day operations. They should provide clear expectations of behavior to ensure consistency and reduce risk, help align employee actions with MCPD's goals, ensure legal and regulatory compliance, promote a cohesive culture, provide a framework for decision-making and performance reviews. For example, FC 210 Department Mission and Organizational Values should provide more than a collage of slogans. This is a foundational policy that defines the department's organizational culture and informs all other departmental policies. Therefore, we urge Chief Yamada to ensure that the mission statement frame the department's law enforcement objectives in the context of a whole of county government effort to advance the well-being of the general public. The values component should explicitly define the role of police officers as protectors and keepers of the community who prioritize the safety and well-being of citizens, especially those most vulnerable. FC 131 on the use of force needs extensive revisions to provide clear and concrete guidance that articulates expectations of performance, establishes clear parameters of behavior for our police officers, and aligns more closely with the expectations of the community. High-performing organizations recognize that its members are human and develop prudent policies that err on the side of caution. One of our numerous recommendations on revising this policy included making clear that the department, as well as the public, rely on the officer's judgment and discretion to employ force proportionally and with the safety of the public in mind. Underscoring the unequivocal importance of applying de-escalation tactics whenever possible, highlighting the duty of a police officer to intervene to prevent or terminate the use of force by another police officer beyond what is objectively reasonable under the circumstances as required by the Maryland Police Accountability Act, making it clear that less lethal devices and trained canines can cause death or severe injury or death under certain circumstances. To avoid potential perceptions of bias, we also recommended that Chief Yamada revise FC 1411, Police Public Media Relations, to provide specific guidance regarding the inclusion of mugshots in press releases. We see no public utility in those mugshots, especially when the police seeks the help of the public in identifying or finding the suspect of a crime, or identifying additional victims of crimes related to the suspect. Through our recommendations on these 3 key departmental policies were extensive, though our recommendations on these 3 key departmental policies were extensive in detail, I can assure you that none were intended to second guess our police officers. On the contrary, our aim is to help the department develop the clear guidance that, combined with their training, enables police officers on the field to use their judgment and discretion to do their job while reducing the risk of harmful outcomes for police officers, the department, and the community. In October, we sent the council letters conveying our advice on 2 other issues. As mentioned earlier, one letter contained 5 recommendations aimed at streamlining and improving MCPD's reporting. We are very pleased that the Public Safety Committee is taking legislative action to move the deadline for mandatory police reporting required under 35-6AC from February 1st to April. And we urge the council to also move on the other 4 recommendations. Specifically, we urge the council to work with MCPD to consolidate departmental reports, such as the data required under Section 35-6AC and MCPD's annual report on crime and safety. We recommend eliminating the requirement that MCPD annually conduct an anonymous survey of residents and officers regarding police community relations. We agree that such a survey is essential to objectively evaluate MCPD's practices and the community's satisfaction with its services. But the department lacks the ability to conduct such a survey, and no funding has been provided for the survey. Also, we believe that MCPD should not be put in the position of evaluating how the community perceives it. Therefore, to be credible, the survey should be conducted either under the auspices of the county executive or the council, or by an independent polling entity contracted by the county. We urge that the council amend Section 35-6AC to add, disaggregated demographic data on crime victims to the required data sets. This requirement should not impose a significant burden on MCPD, as it readily provides this data to the council staff upon request. Yet this data is necessary to evaluate the services provided by MCPD to the sectors of our community most impacted by crime and police practices. It would also help address concerns that MCPD's reporting is overly focused on outputs and is insufficiently tied to outcomes. Finally, we also recommend that the council require MCPD to report racial and ethnic demographic data uniformly with the census and Maryland's race-based traffic stop data dashboard. For example, Asian, Black, Hispanic, White, and other. This recommendation aims to help all of us, MCPD, the council, and the public, compare data across various reports. The other letter we sent you in October was in response to MCPD's decision to encrypt its dispatch communications. We understand the rationale for encryption, but we believe that it is not in the best interest of the police department or the public for MCPD to be the only source of information regarding its practices. Several of the commissioners have worked in the public sector and have firsthand experience of how uncomfortable it can be to work under the critical eye of an inquisitive press. But our founders believed that a vibrant press was indispensable for a democracy to prosper, and we could not agree more. Therefore, we recommend the council require and provide the funds for MCPD to establish a delayed feed mechanism that would allow the press and the public access to be redacted police radio dispatch communications. Finally, we believe that sharing information may help deconflict and avoid duplication of efforts with our colleagues and other agencies and public commissions. So we have started to send copies of our written communications to relevant agencies and commissions, especially the Police Accountability Board and the Criminal Justice Coordinating Commission, with whom we share common responsibilities and interests on some issues. In closing, we would be remiss if we did not thank the council for its support, especially by assigning us with such talented and hardworking staff as Senior Budget and Policy Analyst, Susan Farag, Legislative Analyst, Logan Anbinder. They provide essential support without which the work of the ACP could not have been accomplished. We want to express our appreciation to you, Chairman Katz, and the other members of the council who either attended our forums or were represented by members of their staff. We also want to express our appreciation to the continuous cooperation of the MCPD and the department's responses to our queries, as well as the regular participation of Captain Kathy Estrada, Chief Yamada's representative, and Sergeant Kate Brewer, who represents the Fraternal Order of Police. These two valued members of the commission contribute their knowledge of the department and its membership. Again, thank you for the opportunity to discuss with you the work of the ACP. We look forward to answering any questions you may have at this time.
Thank you. Do either of you have anything in addition to add? The Reverend had to take a drink of water now, so he's had something to say here.
I'm going to follow suit.
Yeah. Do you have anything other than that? I'm going to turn to Ms. Farag, and then we have also have some comments. Go ahead.
I actually don't have anything to add to that. I'm happy to answer any questions you have from the staff perspective.
Well, again, thank you for everything you're doing, and I want to say that very publicly. And again, as you listed your geographics, the age, the background information, it's truly impressive, and it's necessary that we have all of that. And I think some of that was by design, and some of that was by luck. I mean, the whole age thing obviously is also very, very important. Some of that was by design. But I'm reminded many years back, I've done a lot of committee work in my life, and really perhaps the most eye-opening part of any of the committees I've been on was the Multicultural Affairs Committee in Gaithersburg. And I was reminded when I was reading this packet that when we were going through, the Multicultural Affairs Committee was going through the whole idea of the 6 pillars of character counts. And there's, there's 6, obviously, but there's respect and trustworthiness, and the most important part, obviously, is truthfulness. And I remember people on that committee saying that, you want to be truthful, but you also want to be respectful. And they gave the example, one of the people on there gave the example that if your mother comes to you and says, do you like this dress? And you didn't. You want to be respectful. You want to be truthful. And do you tell her that you didn't like it? Do you tell her that it doesn't look good? There were so many different ways, and it was the various cultures that said you can't, you do, you should. And it was so eye-opening to me that there's so many reasons that we need to have a diversity on committees so that we learn from each other. And that's exactly what it is. And I'm glad to see, and my colleagues have heard me say many more times than they would care to, but I believe the community is a family. And just like any family, doesn't mean you have to agree on every topic. You have to do it agreeably. But you learn from that. And being a police officer has been a difficult job forever. And I have met people who have done a marvelous job and have saved a lot of lives. And in fact, just recently, we were at the recognition ceremonies of and I think some of you probably have attended or seen it over the years. And the amount of lives that a police department, especially Montgomery County Police Department, saves on a daily basis is unbelievable. It's unbelievable how many people get themselves in situations where somebody has to come in and save them, but it's unbelievable. And we need to make certain that that police officer realizes that they're appreciated. And you all are certainly trying to do that as well. The whole idea that people go now where the body-worn cameras, I've often joked that no politician would want to wear a body-worn camera, but it's helped the police officer, it's helped the public, it's let us know for sure what really did happen in that moment when there's so much excitement, in that moment where, and perhaps for the public, it's the worst thing that is ever going to happen to them in their life. And a police officer needs to remain calm, and it's a difficult thing. Somebody is shooting at you. I would run away, they run towards. And the whole idea for the monitoring of police calls, we need to figure this out. We do. Anymore, and I used to listen to a scanner constantly. It was before it was on your telephone. First of all, they didn't have telephones the way they have cell phones. And I had a scanner. I kept one in my store. And part of it was because I was nosy. I would see a police officer flying down the street and wanted to know what they were doing. And it was like the news that was happening. But in today's world, you certainly can't. We have to be careful about that we don't put out information about a juvenile. We have to be careful that we don't put information out about someone that's having a mental health crisis. We have to be careful that domestic violence, the whole list goes on. But we also have to your point, make certain that people are comfortable knowing that nobody's hiding anything. I mean, and so I don't know what the solution is. I believe that, to the point earlier, that if we're going to do something and how we do it, then we need to make certain that the police have the resources to do it. Just to say do it without giving them the software or whatever is necessary, and they do have to redact things. So how fast that happens, I mean, they get a lot of calls every day, and so that has to be another discussion, I guess. But I did want to go back to the potential discussion questions. One of them, there's three. One of them is, what challenges, if any, has the commission encountered when attempting to do its work?
Thank you, Chairman Katz. That's a very good question, and
I didn't think it up. Ms. Farag thought it up.
That was a very good question. And I think for us, the biggest challenge was at the beginning. Only 3 of our commissioners were legacy commissioners from the previous commission. And so it took us quite a while to complete our training, to figure out how to work together, to learn about the issues, and to start gaining the knowledge that allowed us to make some of the recommendations we have made to you. So to me, that's one of the biggest challenges we face. And now also being volunteers, unpaid volunteers, maintaining the level of work that we have done. It's, to be perfectly frank, sometimes it's difficult, even for someone like me who's retired, you have family events, and so that's a challenge. It's a challenge for all public volunteers, but that's a challenge we can meet. The challenge of building up the base of knowledge to become productive and to be able to give you good recommendations, that's something that we need to keep in mind.
Thank you all again. And I do want to add that Francisco does incredible work to sustain the efforts of this commission and should not be underselling himself in that way. But I also want to point out that a significant challenge that we face as a commission is the accessibility and transparency and presentation of policing data and public safety data. We mentioned this in our presentation. Multiple of us have advanced degrees. Multiple of us have law enforcement backgrounds. I myself have a STEM background. I have been a math and science tutor for almost a decade, and we still have difficulty parsing and communicating about this data because the way that it is presented, is not the most accessible way it could be presented. And as the folks on the data committee probably could attest to, there's a lot that can be done to present this data in more accessible dashboards so that the raw stats exist, and so do automated ways to collate and interpret that data. We are always striving to make evidence-based recommendations based on statistics around police interactions, statistics around the efficacy and results of searches, the demographics of police interactions, and especially more escalated interactions like traffic stops and like arrests. And that is one of the major challenges that we have faced. We've done a lot of work on this. We have done a lot of work evaluating all of the recommendations that have been presented on the dashboards around effective law enforcement for all and reimagining public safety. And there's still a lot more work to do. So that is something that I think we could work on quite a bit. I know that that is something that takes a lot of resources, but transparency and accessibility around especially policing data is something that will serve MCPD. As you said, it will better serve the county so that we can allocate our resources properly, and it will help the public build trust in the services that are supposed to be protecting our community.
Thank you. And to that degree, I know that the police department is continuing to look for additional software and other items that would be helpful, and I think we need to figure out how that can be and what's the best way to go forward on that. The second question was, what support or resources may be helpful to the ACP moving forward? You touched on it a couple times, but
Well, if I may, just to follow up on our one of our biggest challenges, I would say that keeping the importance of continuity in mind with the next commission, and also replacing members who leave the commission as soon as possible. I think that would be very helpful. Following up on an issue that we have all struggled with, which is transparency and data. You ask pointed questions at your meetings, and I think that's very helpful, and that you follow through on those questions to make sure that we get clear answers on some of the important database issues that we are all struggling with. That's it.
thank you. And then did you have anything else to add? Please.
Sure. I can also add that we are all unpaid volunteers, and we are all so thrilled to be able to have the opportunity to give our time in this way. And also, despite the fact that we are, I would say, very representative of the county as a whole, we span nearly 6 decades, many, many different socioeconomic backgrounds, ethnic backgrounds, areas of the county. There will always be a contingent of folks who cannot serve on a commission like this because they're unable to donate their time in this way. Especially, I would say, on the younger side of things, millennials and Gen Z are facing the most economic disadvantages of any generation. And so as the county's demographics shift and as we want to encourage young folks in the county to take an active participation in county government, in civic processes, infrastructure that supports especially younger and more marginalized county residents in future iterations of the commission, I think would encourage a lot of participation. Whether that's a stipend, whether that's some sort of county volunteer tax incentive. I know that volunteer firefighters in the county receive support in that way. And of course, this is not the same level of time commitment as that. It's not the same level of physical endangerment. But anything that allows all voices to be heard and for the time stipulation not to be a financial barrier to folks, I think is something that would be very, very worth pursuing.
Sure, please.
Can I add something also? I think Ava mentioned that, there are many of us with graduate degrees or advanced degrees on the commission. There's 2 lawyers. There's a couple academic doctors. There's like a junior college faculty on the ACP, right? But there was still a steep learning curve, especially for those of us who were new. And for the first year, I felt like I was back in college. I have an associate's degree in MCPD now, right? I'm going to add that to my LinkedIn later. So, and for newer members or in future iterations of the ACP, you might want to consider putting together all of the PowerPoints that we saw, because it took us a year, right? And I feel like we're just now hitting our stride and getting some work done. And so you might want to consider compiling all of the information that will be essential that people could review on their own time, which kind of takes away from your argument that people may not have time. But at least that, people can have a chance to orient themselves to what they need to know in order to get to work. Yeah, that's
And
fair.
that's something we could.
And then the final one, and then I'm going to turn to my colleagues here, but are there any other policing or commission issues that the ACP feels that the committee should be aware of heading into the budget? And you don't have to give it all right now, because we haven't even seen the budget as such, but it's certainly something that you need to think about as we try to figure out how much money we have and we don't have on this one. So.
Absolutely. One thing I think that's going to continue to come up and increase in severity is navigating federal targeting of immigrants, both documented and undocumented. And I know that MCPD does not collaborate with ICE, but building trust with any sort of policing force in this climate is going to be difficult. And so that is something that will take thought and resources. Same thing with state suppression of protest and free speech, right? There needs to be a lot of intention around how MCPD engages with those issues. Education is also something that needs to be, I think, very intentionally navigated, right? We are still seeing ongoing discussion about police presence in schools. We've seen the SRO program transitioned into the CEO program. What does that look like going into a future where especially undocumented students don't even feel safe in their schools to begin with, right? So that's an issue that will need to be explored and explored carefully, and we would be happy to advise to the best of our ability on that, but I think also more community outreach needs to be done there as well.
Okay.
If I may, I would just add a couple of things. Lately, there has been a great deal of discussion about the benefits of technology in policing, the drone as a first responder. And clearly, technology is very important. Either we keep up with it or we regret it. However, we need to understand that an over-reliance in technology can undermine the development of the relationships between police officers and the community that are fundamental to community policing and policing by consent. So we need to keep that in mind as we discuss taking advantage of the new technologies, whether it's database technologies or drones or whatever. Another issue that I would want to call to your attention, and maybe you already are conscious of this, is that I think we need to change the quality of our dialogue with police leadership. often when I hear the police leadership respond to your questions or our questions, the sense that I get is that the response is that they are in a defensive crouch. Often you get rambling answers that justify what they do, but they often fail to respond to the questions that you ask. I find this to be counterproductive. It comes across as evasive and unhelpful, and I don't think they mean it to be that way. So we need to develop a more frank and productive dialogue so that you get the information that you need and we get the information that we need. And, just because you ask a question, it doesn't mean you're trying to get facts. We're trying to get facts. It doesn't mean that you're questioning what they're doing. So if I say, what are you doing about this issue? The answer should not be, well, of course we're thinking about the issue. Of course we're doing things about the issue. The answer should be, we're doing A, B, and C. We're not doing X. We're not doing Y. We're thinking about these other things that we can do. Specific, to the point. And clear. That's what we need, and that's what you need. And how to get that kind of dialogue that is productive and it's frank, I think that's going to be a challenge for all of us, and I think that we all need to work on it, because I don't think anybody in the ACP is anti-police. I think we all share a common goal with you and with the public and with the members, each and every member of the department, that what we want is a improved public safety. We want our police officers to be safe on the street, and we want all of our citizens, from the most privileged to the most, those who come here and are struggling, to have the same access to public safety and the same protection from the members of the community that we have selected to defend us and protect us. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And just as I started, and I swear I'm going to turn to my colleagues here, but just as I started out by saying, like for the third question about the budget, you might want to stop and think about what the discussions are going to be. I think in many cases what we do, and especially in discussions like this, I mean, everything is on cable, and people can come back and look at it afterwards, and we're asking someone to give us an answer while they're sitting there, and didn't give them an opportunity to really think about it in some cases. I mean, and I think probably what we need to do is be mindful, to your point. We need to be mindful when we ask a question of someone to give them an opportunity to think about it, and then say, if you can't answer it right this second, then please answer it, in writing or whatever, so that they can do the lists. Because, how many times have you come up and you say, what, somebody asked me a question, I gave them this answer, but doggone it, I should have mentioned, and the should have mentioned sometimes is the most important part of that discussion. So I think go ahead, please.
Totally agree with you, and also I think it's fair if somebody says to you, I don't know.
Oh yeah.
Or I'll get you the information later. I think that's quite acceptable.
Well, I appreciate that. And with that, as promised, I'm going to turn to my colleagues. Please, Councilmember Lukey.
Councilmember Mink and I never know which order he's going to call on us in, and so...
I always tell them I love all of my children. So.
He loves all his children, and he chose the oldest child today.
It's starting.
We are. Kristen and I are a tough crowd. And we enjoy this. We enjoy this. Thank you all for your presentation, which was exceedingly well organized. And I'm going to try to pick through some of the things because I write all over, sideways, in the margin, and everything else. And Mr. Stevenson, you're sitting back there, and every time they say your name, I think of John Stevens, who is John Legend, who I went to college with, but like Legend was not his name way back then. But he is certainly a legend now. I know. I totally get what you're saying about dashboards being useful and not just raw data, because I find raw data, particularly for someone who doesn't have a STEM background or isn't used to working with statistics, really challenging, because you then go, it says this, therefore it means this, which is not at all how data interpretation works. So I was thinking about some of the dashboards. One of my state clients had that I worked with there, and they were on, and I'll make sure you all have the website. I would love if you would take a look at those and see how they work and how they can be, played around with, because they include all 24 counties' information on different topics, and just see if that's kind of like what you're talking about. And then also go look at the ones on the Governor's Office of Crime Prevention and Policy and say, are those what you're talking about? Do those work? Is some of the stuff you're looking directly for from MCPD's data available there, or not available, or partially available? Because the Police Accountability Act created a lot of reporting requirements and things that they now have up and running, and it took a while to get it going, but it's there now. So back to your point about the implementation of the Maryland Police Accountability Act, and some of the issues were on the state side, some of the issues were with each local jurisdiction, but now we're far enough along that we have some things to take a look at, see, evaluate, and go, is this working, not working? How might it be improved? And also learn from the different agencies, because there may be common threads, not just with our department, but with our municipal partners or other county departments. Are there common issues in the reporting or in doing it in certain ways? How can we overcome them? Because probably if we're having an issue, it's somebody else's problem too. So I think that might be something, as you all move ahead into the next calendar year to put on the to-do list or take a look at and, give some feedback.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really appreciate you mentioning that some of our partner agencies or other agencies in the state do have dashboards that compile some of this data. We know that some of this data is available actually on the state dashboard. And so I would be thrilled to take a look at some of the sites that you mentioned, provide some feedback on what works, what could be improved, how can we adapt this for our county and our policing landscape. One thing we did notice, and I think you can speak more, Francisco, on the data committee's work, is the inconsistency in reporting categories.
Yeah,
between the county and the state.
That's another one of my notes on my page, because it makes it hard. People collect data at different times and at different points, or their collections started at different points and for different purposes. And now, again, we've had some time to digest. And it's really important to have sort of a data dictionary and or a data guidance document to talk through how it gets categorized, when you would suppress data to put an asterisk instead of a number, a raw number, in order to prevent revealing an individual's identity, like the rules of how the data gets collected, maintained, and then displayed. Like, that's fundamental to good data governance and to making sure, again, what you've got is useful, and also to finding out where there were limitations, like based on a particular year or a particular time, or, we changed from whatever, what was the thing before NIVERS called? The Uniform Crime UCR switched to NIVERS, and and then there's some hiccups there. This happens with every type of data, not just public safety data, but we need to know and keep that in that document so you know when you're displaying a thing, hey, this has a different meaning back here, or we do not have data for this one particular category because, gender, for example, has been categorized differently over time. We have different ways that are doing that now. But we can't say, well, then that means that there were 0 of this particular gender classification impacted in a particular year because we had only 2 at some point, right? And then that's not really accurate. It's just that it was different and not recognized. And so we have to have a way of keeping that maintained for data governance moving forward.
Okay. I think it's also important to keep in mind that the way that the department presents data reflects the way the department sees data, understands data, and uses data. And the problems that we are having in the reports that we see in trying to get a better understanding of the data also, to me, reflects the problems that the department itself has. And I think I'm not sure. So we are going to make recommendations to improve the quality of the data, the presentations. What needs to happen is follow through and an understanding how the police is going to use that data. It doesn't help much. I was just finished reading Gettysburg, and
Light reading.
Yes, light reading. When General Lee's corps commanders did not follow his instructions, he didn't do anything. When General Meade's corps commanders didn't follow his instructions and endangered his line, he spent the bulk of the second day of the fighting readjusting troops to making sure. So there were different data and different responses. And what we need to see is when there's a response, when there's data, how does the department respond to that?
Right. Well, and I think, and if I'm thinking through, and again, answering on the fly or thinking through on the fly can always be a bit dangerous, right? But if I'm thinking about what the department would collect ordinarily as its business need, if you will, may be different from what policymakers may want to see. And specifically, if they don't have a reason to get into fine-tuning ethnicity or other sort of demographic type of things in order to complete their work, they haven't collected it historically. However, then policymakers and in this sphere or in the legal sphere want to know. So then you have this, well, do I have a business need? What is the business need? And then I feel like that's where both sides need to come together, the policy side and the operational side, and say, what could we glean from and learn from if we did have it? And what could that inform in terms of the business decision of the, executive department, whatever department it is? It doesn't, but you may not know a particular thing in order to take care of the problem at hand, but it may in fact change how you allocate resources or what you might do moving forward. So there are benefits. I think it's, again, back to that dialogue that you so eloquently stated at the end of the need for saying, hey, sometimes we just need to ask some questions. There's not necessarily a negative intent there, but I do need to know. And I, in particular, I guess it was a year or so, two years ago, was helping administer a final exam at the School of Public Policy for a professor, where they had a panel of legislators up there, and the students were doing their presentations. And juvenile justice is a hot topic. And I was listening to session after session of these young folks coming up to talk, but a core premise of their thesis made a series of assumptions that were not accurate. One of the biggest being that every time a juvenile was arrested or referred to DJS, that they were incarcerated, which is really untrue. We don't, I mean, it is, aside from physically impossible, it just does not happen. Now, there's lots of other tentacles, and we could spend hours talking about the juvenile justice system and its functionality or non-functionality, as I like to say. But, you know, that was the core piece of everything they were then assuming from there on about their presentation. And then when I would ask, I said, does it change your analysis if you knew that in fact only X% are ever incarcerated? And there was complete silence because they didn't know. But that's important, right? That informs the analysis and then maybe makes you go, what else is going wrong here? Are kids not getting the services they're supposed to be getting? Which is true, right? So, you know, might there have been a different thesis had a series of assumptions not been made? Probably. And probably would have developed some really robust other things to talk about. But who were they going to ask? Did they have access to someone who was going to answer that? And so talking about information and access, I want to talk about the encryption piece. And sort of the balance of the First Amendment with also the balance of a victim's privacy and rights. And I know it is critically important for our press to be able to have access. And they have, you know, journalistic ethics and standards that they must follow. So when a journalist is on a crime scene and they take a photograph, they're only going to take certain photographs, and they are not going to publish certain photographs because that would violate their standards. Like my colleague over here, my family ran a business in my tiny hometown, and there was a scanner. And it was there all the time. You know, I knew every fire call, every police call. Of course, it was hard not to know the fire calls. The station was around the corner from the store, so you heard the alarm go off every time it happened. But here in Maryland, we are a rare jurisdiction in that for recording of a communication, of verbal communication, requires two-party consent. And so we actually had a case from a homicide that took place in 1997 over on the Eastern Shore. It was the first appellate opinion I ever got to write as a law clerk. Yet it involved that particular statute. Well, I'm sitting here going, back in 1997, we didn't have bloggers and Facebook and Twitter and social media and everything else where somebody can take something they could pick up on those scanners and put out there into the universe without regard to anyone's thoughts, feelings, ethical standards, moral compass, or anything else. But that's not the landscape we live in right now. But we do still have a two-party recording consent. And so when I think about that and the balance of things, my question would be, or my thought is, well, why don't you talk to the PIO at the police department and her team and find out what are they doing, if anything, that's different in terms of how they're communicating and notifying the media when there's something that is of that type of interest where they want to be able to send a reporter out and do interviews. What has changed? What's going on now with the encryption? If a reporter makes a request for other documents or things related to it, how are you trying to facilitate that under the MPIA? Because that's typically how they get deeper document evidence is through those types of requests. And what, if any, adjustments that you think they might need moving forward? Again, back to the budget point, do they need additional resources to help manage that more effectively in the age of we're encrypting the calls as they're happening, we know the public needs to still stay informed. We want to make sure they're being informed by those who have journalistic integrity and that it's timely, right? So like balancing all those pieces. And I think that would be a great thing for the group to tackle moving forward.
Well, the department has made very clear at the hearings that it's doing nothing different with regards to MPIA
At whose hearings?
here at Montgomery Council. It has
Oh,
made,
I've never heard, I haven't asked those questions
Well,
of anyone, and we have
well,
not.
I have, the department has made clear that they are doing nothing different with regards post-encryption. They have said it here. At least I've seen it in the recordings. But more fundamental is the issue of should the department be the only source of information? And that's what they prefer. They would prefer that they be the only source of information regarding what is, its own activities. And that to me poses a fundamental problem. If they are the only source of information, it poses a problem for the department itself. If the department is the only source of information, it only takes one mistake to undermine years of effort to build confidence and transparency with the community. So, from our perspective, we know that and our recommendation is very concrete. We know that there are ways of doing this, of solving this issue. And they're not inexpensive. But we think that it's important for the community. It's important for the department to protect the department from itself. It's important for the community, and I think it's well worth the taxpayers' money.
The other piece was, I think you mentioned Reverend Bellamy at the end, about which one of you said it? About new members coming on board. Yes. And having a repository, if you will, a place where that can be kept. And I guess this is more a question for Ms. Farag, but since this is a council staffed committee, is that something that we could maintain so that as new folks come on board? Because I have seen, to your point, and I when you mentioned the need to replace members sooner rather than later, I looked over at my colleagues because I sit on the HHS committee too, which has a ton of boards, committees, and commissions. And every group that came in this fall to talk to us, that was one of their problems, where they're not getting members replaced fast enough through the executive branch. And so, we are really attuned to that. And I believe it because it hampers the work of the body. Then you're missing people, or to your point, then we get the new person and they are asking all the things we've covered for the last 2.5 years, 3 years, 4 years, and they don't know where to go to get up to speed. Is that something we could do and keep here for new members, for them to have access to a folder or file so that they can onboard and look at old topics of interest? Because everybody's going to come with a different background, so certain things may be known to some, and other areas they might say, hey, I really need to take a deep dive into this other stuff.
Absolutely. We actually keep all of the commission's work on their website, and it's divided into different categories that may not be easily navigable by a person who's just new to this process. Since I deal with it all the time, I know exactly where to go look. But we can either work as staff, Mr. Anbinder and I, and IT, to figure out a way to put that repository on your website. We are also happy to work with members of the ACP to know what they think is of the most value for new members.
Yeah.
And we can propose Logan and I can propose some stuff that the council's been working on, just a synopsis, and then the broader national perspective. I do try to provide a weekly update to members that provide new things that come up in policing and news reports. But in terms of what a new person who's actually interested in serving on the commission, we can figure out a way together.
Yeah, because again, you live with these things, so you know where they are, but if coming at it from the perspective of I'm brand new and I'm just trying to get to what I want to get to with minimal clicks, but I need to learn and I want to learn and I'm here and I'm interested. So great.
Councilmember Mink.
Hello. I have to say, I think this is my favorite presentation from this body thus far, like by a long, and it's been gradually, improving over time. But this was really a big leap forward. I'm really, really appreciative of all of the thoughtful work that you and that the whole team have clearly put into this. It really directly addresses so many of the questions that we have discussed up here that we have been hearing about from the public, and you have talked about them in a very straightforward and clear manner. And some of them are tricky to navigate, and you have still been very, very clear about the variety of perspectives, potential solutions, and being very, logical and data-based in your navigation of those. So very much appreciated. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Please keep up the good work. This is great. I also wanted to thank you for your letter to SAO McCarthy. This was an issue in results to that related to the consent searches and the firearms data that I had raised, and I wrote a memo related to it that's in the packet from December 4th, 2023 committee session, actually. That we did related to cannabis enforcement. And I had not realized that the same statistic, that he was continuing to cite the same statistic that had been cited in that memo. And it's footnoted and attributed, to Mr. McCarthy. So in the memo, I similarly cited other information that we had, including from MCPD. And, so I really appreciate that you have brought that back up, because we do need to make sure, and I can see where he got the numbers from, but the way that it's being phrased is misleading. So did you receive a response by any chance?
Not yet. Logan and I just followed up last week, but I wasn't able to connect with their office, probably because of the holiday, but that's on my to-do list for this week too.
Excellent. Okay, great. So hopefully we can get that cleared up. Thank you very much for bringing that up. When it comes to the radio feed, so there's two major categories of concerns: the officer safety and resident privacy, essentially. So a lot of times when we talk about these, it tends to be hypothetical situations that we're talking about as opposed to specific situations. That's what it's been here. So I wanted to understand first if we know of instances of problems, specific problems here relating from unredacted feeds or lack of delayed feeds, et cetera. Do we have examples of those? What did they look like? I don't know if anybody has, if Ms. Frog or the panel may know.
I believe that the police department mentioned that in the briefing over the summer, but I can't recall the exact specificity. But there were some other conversations that we've had. They had concern about swatting incidents. Somebody would just call in something fake and just listen to the scanner to see what happened. And I think there was some concern, obviously, about personally identifiable information. And there's been a lot of concern about political leaders and other people that have been victims of political violence or threats of political violence, and that being made public through the scanners. So.
Okay, thanks.
But I can follow up on that and get you more specificity.
Yeah, that would be great. And I think that the specificity would be helpful because there's a couple categories of solutions that we're looking at. There's the delay, much cheaper and easier. And then there's the redaction. now we're talking about it costs, right? And so the delay, I think that would address many of the issues that we're talking about. But the redaction is related to only very, specific category of concerns. And so understanding if we are seeing real life high priority examples of those, like that's what we're going to want to balance, I think, against the cost of doing that additional layer, the redaction. And so there's a financial cost that comes with the redaction. That's also, I think that's where we're going to see the public concerns about censorship and, et cetera, and possibly impacts on community trust. That's where that's where I have heard concerns from the public, is more so on the redaction side versus the delayed side. Thoughts on that?
Well, two things. With regards to the reasons for encryption, the police department has made some arguments that we find are persuasive for the need to encryption, including, from what they have said, instances in which individuals have used the scanning process to aid their criminal activities. The other argument that they make, and it's...
I'm sorry, and could you be a little more specific in what you mean by...
In other words...
getting real-time updates as to where the police are.
Exactly.
Right, okay, so that's where, and I think that a delay that's long enough could address that.
The other argument that police have made is that as police communications between agencies, both other state, county, and federal agencies become more interconnected and compatible, the standard is being one that for requiring encryption. So in other words, in order for MCPD to communicate and to have interoperability with other law enforcement agencies and other public safety agencies, both at the local, state, and federal level, they need to be encrypted. This is a growing standard that's becoming more important. So that's the rationale that they put out, and I think that's compelling. The issue that you mentioned about redaction is one that we understand. I think that would require the county council and working with MCPD to develop clear guidelines for the redaction. In other words, what are the items that are going to be redacted? Specific names, specific illnesses, whatever that is, so that it's clear and to everyone. And that's what we can offer.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. And yet, certainly, if we went the route of redaction, we would have to be very cautious and thoughtful about how that's approached. And which is also why I think it's so important to make sure we really understand the nuances of what exactly are we trying to accomplish with that, and is redaction the way to accomplish it? Like swatting it happens in jurisdictions that don't have public feeds at all. So I would hesitate to suggest that redaction would reduce the number of swatting attempts without any evidence that it actually would do so. And again, given the significant cost and effort that it would take, I think it's really important that we are clear about why, the reason for doing so. So I don't know if there's any other thoughts on that, but I would just note that the more, this is worth saying because I know you all are thinking about data. And so I know I'm talking to the right crowd here. As we think about making a decision about the different options here for protecting data and information, making sure that we understand what exactly is on the line, what's the reason for thinking that this would solve it, what's the reason for thinking that this is the best way to solve it, noting that there's no legal requirements for redaction, but the calls for service are not, we don't have a legal requirement there. We're not governed by, MCPT is not governed by HIPAA, et cetera. So this is which isn't to say that we shouldn't consider it, right? But that's not the reason. We're not legally mandated to do it. So just making sure that we clearly understand the reasons and what kind of a solution it does or doesn't offer. Let's see. Oh, and I think also backing up the point about how you all are volunteers doing lots of work, and you're spending additional time than is required, and it is showing. Again, I will say this is exciting. But I think that that's a really good point, and the importance of being able to make sure that this is an opportunity to participate in this body is open to as many people as possible. I think this is something that we need to continue to think about, and especially for our young people. And so I think it was Mixed Equipment that brought up that that's something especially to think about. And we have seen the participation of young people on a variety of commissions be an added challenge, understandably, of course. And so I think the stipend question will be a good one to come back to. And also wondering if maybe there's an opportunity for, a partner, knowing that we've got fiscal constraints, that if there might be opportunities for like a partnership with Montgomery College, a scholarship, consider something like that, that could be, a win-win for everybody, maybe would be something worth thinking about. Thoughts on whether you think that would be enticing or a possibility?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a partnership with Montgomery College could be great. I think this might require a little bit more coordination, but a partnership with the universities at Shady Grove could be compelling. I know a lot of young folks are entering the workforce as teachers. If there's an opportunity for PD hours for participating on our county's commission, that could be something interesting. And any other professions that require PD hours that I don't know off the top of my head.
That's a great point. That's a great point. Okay, excellent. Thank you all so much, and I will yield.
Thank you. Ms. Frog, is there anything else to discuss?
I just wanted to state, since there was a lot of in-depth conversation about the radio encryption, that I will follow up and get more information on how different jurisdictions around the state are handling it, what the interoperability is with those different jurisdictions, what DC is doing, and I can either get specific questions from the ACP or gather it on my own and distribute it both to the committee and the commission itself.
That would be most helpful. Go ahead, please.
Thanks. The reference to DC also reminded me that another conversation I think that we'll want to return to is the one that again, I think Mixed Equipment touched on in regards to impact on our immigrant community and how we are going to maintain trust, impact on First Amendment issues. I think it's well said that we need to be thoughtful about how we're going to respond. None of this is going to have an easy answer. They're all definitely going to be complicated. So this is going to be a really, really important question, especially I think for us to make sure that we are engaging with the community about, so we can really get a sense of what would be helpful, what would be harmful, weighing that against what's really possible, legal complications and liabilities on the county side, all of that. We could really use your help in navigating that as we go through this.
Councilmember Lukey.
Quick question or follow-up for Ms. Farag, because it came up during Councilmember Mink's discussions. For HIPAA, which HIPAA doesn't apply to police communications, however, it would apply to MCFRS because they can in fact bill for transport. And so I wanted to know whether, I don't believe MCFRS encrypts currently. I would want to know whether that is also something that is in play moving forward for MCFRS, since that is protected health information that can get relayed over those channels.
I will have to check on that and get back to you.
Yeah, thank you.
Anything else, Ms. Farag?
No, I think this is it. I just wanted to mention just a few of the operational mechanics from a staffing perspective, that the commission has been really wonderful to work with and very responsive. There have been no challenges like attendance. Everybody is attending and participating, and it's been extremely helpful and informative and insightful to be staffing.
Thank you. We appreciate this, as was mentioned several times, we appreciate this presentation. We appreciate continuing working with you. And this is not the easiest topic, but this is a very necessary topic. And by working together, we're going to continue to do such a good job. Thank you very much. And we also want to very publicly thank our first responders and police officers and firefighters for saving our lives every day. They are appreciated. Thank you very much. We are adjourned.